So today we're going to talk about how to use the Python visual in Power BI, and we're going to go start to finish here. So we're going to install our Python environment with a specific version, and we are going to connect to that in Power BI, and we are going to configure a visual that is using that. So the very first time I set this up, it was probably a couple years back now, there weren't any instructions really on how to do it. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out how to do. So I thought perhaps this would be helpful to other people that are also having difficulties with it. But this this article that I'm got up on my screen here came out, looks like January of 2023 this year. And it's very helpful because it tells you, for example, what Python version is supported in the Power BI web app, which is important to take note of because it's not the latest version. And so what you'll find is if you are using the Python visual and doing trying to do newer, fancier things, not all of them work in the web app. So take note of that. And it also tells you which packages are supported. So, and this is in the web app. So you'll note up here that it does mention that in the desktop, you can pretty much do whatever you want. In the web app, you are very limited as far as what is supported. And really quick here, let's do a quick sneak preview of what we're building today. So I've got a correlation matrix here using the Seaborn library in Python, and correlation matrices, in my opinion, are super awesome. The ability to easily see at a glance what things in your data model correlate with each other is really cool. And there's not a really great way to do this that I've found in Power BI without using some kind of R or Python code. There's a couple of measures, not a couple, there's one measure in DAX that will let you, there's one DAX expression that will let you, there's a DAX expression that will let you check correlation between two things, but there's nothing that will let you check correlation with your entire model all at once, which is something that is surprisingly easy to do in Python. So that's why we're using Python here. So if you're not familiar with correlation matrices, generally what you do is you follow a row across. So for example, this is the Titanic data set and we're looking at who survived. And a larger number, or a more purple color in this case, means that there's a positive correlation there, so they were more likely to survive. And then you follow that down to the bottom row to see what that correlated with. So the looks like fair price positively correlated with survivalship, only slightly. So this 0.18 is pretty low for correlation. And then obviously it correlated with itself, so you ignore the ones in this case. And then the female gender, so females were more likely to survive, males were less likely to survive. And let's get started. I am going to use Anaconda today because Anaconda makes it very easy to install specific versions of Python in environments. And that is very important in this case. So if you don't have Anaconda installed, you can just, internet search for Anaconda, download the version for your operating system. It is pretty straightforward. Once you have it installed, the next thing you're going to want to do is set up your environments. To do that, we are going to run Anaconda. So if you search for Anaconda in your start menu, the Anaconda prompt will show up there. So we're just going to run that. And it came up on my other monitor. Let's move it over. So we're going to do Conda space create. And then we're going to do double dashes name. And then we're going to pick a name for our environment. So I could call this Power BI if I wanted to, because that's what we're going to be using it for. You can call it whatever you want though. And then we're going to put our Python version. So Python equals, and then the version number. So 3.7 is the one that is the highest that is supported by the Power BI web app. So that's what we're going to use. And it asks me if I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure. All right, so we have our environment created. Now we need to activate our environment. So you can install multiple versions of Python in different environments. And the thing is that you have to activate the one that you want to use at any given point in time. And this becomes important later because when we're using Power BI, every time we want to be using Python in Power BI on the desktop, we need to go in and activate it and run it in this command prompt before we start working with it in Power BI. So that's something that's important to note. So I'm going to do conda activate and then our environment name, which was Power BI. All right, so you can see the command prompt right here has it activated. You can tell which environment is active by the name in front of the prompt. So now we're going to open Power BI. It really wants to open on my other monitor. Here we go. Okay, so in Power BI, if you go to the File menu and then Options and Settings, and then click on Options here, we need to tell Power BI about our Python environment. So in the left-hand side here under Global, there's a section called Python Scripting. And it looks like it automatically detected my Python directory, so it found it. If it didn't, you can go ahead and select it here. We're just going to click OK. All right, so the visual that we're going to use is the pie visual on the right-hand side over here. So I'm going to click that to add it to the screen, and it says you need to enable script visuals to begin creating a Python script. It may contain security or privacy risks. So I'm going to click enable. This would be something to check for if you're in a organization that is very sensitive about security. So check with people before you are running these things if that is a priority for you. And the thing we got to do now is we need to drag some values into the visualization pane. So anything that we drag in here is going to be available for us to use with Python. And I am going to go and grab some data to use for this because I don't have any yet. So we'll be right back. All right, so we open this up. You can see there's two lines at the top. These came with the visual. So when you add your fields, this will automatically show up here. It takes the fields that you've added and puts them in a data set essentially. But the thing is that they're commented out. And if you do something like add a field here, the visual is updating. So it clearly was able to pick that up, but this line didn't update. So I don't think that it's actually using this on the back end at all. And my guess is that it's not using this anywhere you can modify it either. So if you want to try and prevent it from dropping duplicate rows, I'm not sure how you would do that because I don't think that it's actually literally reading it from here. But you can open it up in the IDE to look at a little bit more of what's going on. So it looks like it's importing some stuff, and then it's basically creating like a temporary CSV out of the fields and reading from that, which is interesting. And then our actual code that we added is down here. Oh, it looks like it already imported PyPlot, so I didn't need to do that. But so let's go ahead and close this, and then I'm going to go through exactly what each parts of this code is doing. So what I did was I dropped these fields from my data model into the values well of the Python visual. It looks like since they're using pandas in here already, they've already imported pandas somewhere. So I'm going to skip the importing pandas, and then we're going to import Seaborn because I like Seaborn for the visualization aspect of it. You can use Matplotlib or whatever you want to, but I shouldn't say whatever you want to because it's actually quite limited. If you remember from that article that I was showing you, there's a limited number of libraries. Seaborn does work, but Power BI is using a kind of ancient version of all of these things, and so your mileage will vary as far as what works and what doesn't when you're actually implementing it. So we're going to do import Seaborn as SNS. So Seaborn is a library that lets you do visualization, and it's one of the better looking ones in my opinion. And then for our, I'm just going to copy paste this because this is really long. For matplotlib, we're going to import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. We're specifically using this because for whatever reason, this Power BI visual needs you to use the plt.show with parentheses at the end of your code in order for it to spit out a visual. You'll get an error if you don't use this. And then we're going to do our data set. I'm just going to reuse the same variable name here. I'm going to use pd pandas dot get dummies on our data set. So what get dummies does is it takes the text values. So for instance, in this table, our gender column is a text field with male or female in it. And pandas and Python generally really likes you to have numeric columns if you're trying to run anything on it at all. And so what this does, what getDummies does, is it takes all of your text fields in your data set and converts them to columns with a true-false value. So we're going to have a column called male, a column called female, and it's going to be 0 or 1 instead of that single text field. And then we are going to use, I'm going to make a new variable called correlation, and that's going to be our data set dot core. So dot core is to get correlation for all of the columns. And numeric only equals false. So the behavior of this dataset.core is such that it has a tendency to take out the text fields when it tries to run the correlation if you don't put this in. So I'm adding that in there. And then for our heat map, that's going to be equal to SNS. So that's our short code for Seaborn dot heat map. And then we're going to do that on our correlation variable. And notation equals true. I honestly can't remember what this does, but I used it previously, and so I just keep using it. Is that not what? Well, maybe we'll try taking it out and see what happens. And then for CMAP, CMAP is the color profile for this. We're gonna use boo poo. I think that's blue purple. There's, if you go to Seaborn's website, they've got a whole bunch of different color themes that you can use for this. So you just choose one of the named ones, or you can create your own if you want to. We're going to use this one, and then we're going to do plt.show on our heat map. And then we're going to run this. So this little run button up here is what runs it. You can see it's spinning. And there it goes. So let's try taking this out and see what happens. Oh yeah, so the annotation true puts the numbers on the boxes. So that's useful. I'm gonna leave that in there. And there's no Control Z. I'm trying to undo, but I can't. I'm gonna type it back in. All right, and the resizing actually works pretty well as far as these things go. Where's my numbers? There they are. So like if I scale this up and rerun it, it actually resized, which is pretty cool. And actually the scale down works even better. It's like dynamically scaling up and down now, which I didn't a minute ago, so I don't know what the deal with that is, but I did have issues in the past with getting the sizing right, so your mileage will vary as far as getting things to fit properly. If I add a field to this, so like if I add class, you'll notice that it is spinning and it runs and it added it to there, so that's good. And the cool thing about this is that you can use the same filters and whatnot on the page level as you do with other visual types and they'll still work. It means you can kind of make your correlation matrix a little bit dynamic, which isn't something that you get very easily with Python. So it's kind of like a value add thing there. So just as a frame of reference, I'm going to take this last line out and see what happens to show you. So you see it can't display this visual, and if you click on see details, it says no image was created, so it didn't result in creation of any visuals. So it really wants you to do that plot.show to produce a visual. So that was how to create a correlation matrix with Python using the Python visual in Power BI. If you have any cases where you have used Python in Power BI with this visual that you want to share, please let me know in the comments, because I'm kind of interested to hear what other people have gotten out of this as far as interesting use cases. And as always, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day.